Welcome to another fun-filled Monday edition of Second City Sports, the last show for the month of January. Right here, we're live in 11 color Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeem McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, that's CK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Kim McGee on the Twitter and at Kim McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why we said so? Because boy, thank goodness it's a Monday. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, so you can catch up on our other live shows that we have airing throughout the week. So you haven't missed them, you can go back and watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Please download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, you can follow us on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. And speaking of Second City Sports, you can follow our podcast, which we know you love. We see the numbers. It keeps on rising to the top. You can subscribe by going to War on Anchor. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type this in your search engine boxes on those podcast platforms. You ready? WARR on Anchor. Once again, that's at War on Anchor on all podcast platforms. And make sure you go ahead and give War Media a follow at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at War Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll and or do something stupid like that Cincinnati mayor did this time last week, we'll get into that. I'm sending Lakina full power to give you fools to build a beer butte.
Bye-bye.
I love when she says that. But before we begin, we must remind you that you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV. That's right. So celebrate with the squad, get with the program, and no more excuses. Sports Zone Chicago is now on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on the sports folder and download Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. If you don't have a Roku TV, that's okay. You're on your Chromebook like I am right now, your PC, your iPad, iPhone, iTouch, your Android phone. Just download the Roku TV app and access Sports Zone Chicago that way. So celebrate with the squad, get with the program, no more excuses. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, live and on demand.
Anywhere, whenever you want, that's wherever you get your podcast or whatever. And yeah, anytime you want, all the shows are right there for you.
Hey, we can't provide. Anyway, let's start the show, Lakina, by discussing the two conference championship games that took place yesterday in the NFL playoffs. We'll start off in the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection, as Tom Jordan once noted. As the Philadelphia Eagles will play in Super Bowl 57 2 weeks from now, representing the National Football Conference as they defeated the San Francisco 49ers 31-7. Jalen Hurts, he didn't have to do too much as far as passing is concerned. He only had 121 yards passing. He was sacked one time. Christian McCaffrey led the 49ers in rushing with 15 carries, 84 yards in a first quarter touchdown. In the receiving department, Kenneth Gainwell, Devontae Smith had 2 catches for 36 yards. And Brock Purdy, the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, was injured early. Lakina, I was really looking forward to this game, but after Brock Purdy injured his elbow and he did not return, it was all downhill for San Francisco. Of course, I picked the 49ers back on our last show on Friday. Their defense hung in there tough, but once Brock Purdy went out, you could tell that the whole attitude of the entire team changed.
Yeah, it's sort of one of those things where you can tell that the air kind of let out of the team. And poor Kyle Shanahan. I mean, you thought that maybe, okay, yeah, here's a rookie who, finally is starting to kind of get it going and such. But then, he gets hit, the elbow hits, it's Hassan Reddick's, helmet or whatever. And then he couldn't throw the ball. Josh Johnson, comes in, throws, fumbles, and then has then fumbles again, and then now, of course, because he suffers a concussion about halfway through the third, and so he couldn't come back. So, and then Purdy tried to come back, but you can tell that he couldn't throw the ball. So it was just like a mess for San Francisco from jump. And once Purdy got hurt, that was basically all she wrote for the 49ers. Philadelphia, I want to go back to a play that happened during like earlier part of that game. It was it was in Philly's first drive. They win it head. It was like I think 4th and 3 or something like that. Hurts passes to Devontae Smith. Apparently, I guess all the indications were in the replay that he dropped the ball. I guess I'm talking about Smith, and but they held up towards the line, and I don't know if maybe Kyle Shanahan didn't see it, or maybe somebody couldn't get to him to challenge it in time. But somebody else said, well, they should have reviewed it from jump. But yet there was another play that happened prior to that caused a fumble. Of course, that injury, of course, forced Purdy to get out the game for a little bit. And then, they were able to challenge that. I'm talking about the Eagles. So the whole thing was just weird from, the game was weird from jump. And it's just one of those things where you just wonder, like, okay, had Purdy not gotten hurt, had Jimmy G had been able to play or been active, this is why you should have 3 quarterbacks on a roster. That doesn't, unfortunately that didn't happen. But, take nothing away from what Philly did. I mean, Hurst didn't do too much. Miles Sanders had a couple of rushing touchdowns. It was really the defense that was the story there. Of course, like I said, Hassan Reddick caused a couple of fumbles, and had tackles for losses and such. So that whole thing sort of like how all that sort of transpired. So the Eagles basically, I don't want to say they did kind of dominate. By the second half, you thought that maybe that maybe the 49ers still had a shot to win this game, but they couldn't get anything going on offense. Kittle was a non-factor. It was just so many things that kind of transpired. And it was unfortunate, too, that they couldn't, the 49ers were able to, be at full strength. So it was just unfortunate. Nick Bosa got hurt. A couple other guys got hurt as well. So it just wasn't a good game for San Francisco all around.
Yeah, a couple of points. The Devontae Smith catch, that was not a catch. And I was like you, why didn't 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan challenge that? He definitely would have won that challenge. On that Brock Purdy play, that where he fumbled the ball, I thought his arm was going forward, and that would have been called an incomplete pass, but it didn't turn out to be. And number 3, I don't know about you, Lakina, but it looked like Josh Johnson was unprepared once he entered the ball game. I know they got a little spur when Christian McCaffrey ran up the right sideline to tie the game at 7, but outside of that, you saw that the Philadelphia's defense, their eyes were bigger than their stomachs, and they teed off on him. Even though the Philadelphia only could record 3 sacks, you could tell that Josh Johnson wasn't prepared, and the plays they were running, it looks like they were disorganized, and he didn't know what to do. He was like a deer caught in headlights. And I'm with you as far as if Jimmy G was in there. I know that he makes critical mistakes at times, in crucial times during the ball game. We've seen that throughout the postseason, throughout the years with him. But I guarantee you this: he would not have looked unprepared yesterday if he was healthy enough to be playing.
Yeah, it's sort of one of those things where had he been at least healthy enough, you probably wasn't 100%, but at least they would have had a better shot of winning that game. Now, look,
Yes.
you give the Eagles credit, for it all. I mean, look, their defense, played well. Like I said, Hassan Reddick was definitely the player of the game on defense for them. I know Lionel Jones, I should say, had a couple of big plays as well. Chauncey Gardner, CJ Gardner Johnson had a couple of big plays too. So it's sort of like, again, you don't want to take nothing away from what the Eagles did. I mean, they basically dominated. Nick Sirianni had a great game plan. They executed it well, but it just feels like, and also too, the 49ers basically beat themselves. Guys got hurt. They committed some dumb penalties. We'll get to that in a second, our studs and duds. But it's just one of those things where you're kind of like, you give the Eagles all the credit, but you think the 49ers, had they been at full strength, had they had a better, game plan, had, everything else sort of going on. I mean, they had 4 QBs, for play for them this season. That's right there with the Bears, the Cardinals, the Jets, the Panthers, and the Rams. So it's just like you feel for the 49ers and their fans.
Yes, you do another wasted opportunity, especially in today's NFL. You don't get these many opportunities to play for a Super Bowl, or perhaps be a consistent playoff team every year. That's why you give organizations like Green Bay, to a lesser state, in New England credit for what they've been doing over the past 20 plus years or so. I think San Francisco is still going to be in good shape because you remember you have Trey Lance coming back next year. You may say goodbye to Jimmy G, but I think Brock Purdy still will be back next year. So they have it's a good problem for them to have, but still, you don't want to waste these opportunities if you're the 49ers, because they're looking inside their own division. We know Seattle barely made the playoffs. Yes, Geno Smith will be back next year, but you don't know how that team's going to look. Arizona is going to take a step back because Kyler Murray won't play perhaps all of next season. And the Rams, they're about to go through some salary cap hell. They're talking about trading Jalen Ramsey. We'll get into that in our next segment. But San Francisco on paper is looking good for next year. But Lakina, as you know as well as I do, especially in the NFL, what looks good on paper doesn't always transfer to what happens on the field.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of like the thing there. And look, I mean, we'll see how the salary cap situation is, because apparently, I guess they keep revising it, so no one really knows what the salary cap is for some of these teams. But it's sort of like we'll have to wait and see what the 49ers do. Now, as far going into what Philly and what they're doing, I mean, it's sort of like they're going back to the Super Bowl. It's I believe this is what their fourth trip to the Super Bowl, I believe. So of course, in 2017, they ended up winning it. So we'll see what happens. They actually are the 15th to win the divisional playoff and the conference championship by at least 21 points. Each of those previous four teams ended up winning the Super Bowl. So a little bit of synopsis there if you're an Eagles fan. So that might help you out a little bit. But I mean, look, if you're the Eagles, I think, look, you kind of came, I don't want to say you came out of nowhere. I mean, you made the playoffs last year. You thought that maybe once, making a couple of, big adjustments and such, you brought in a couple of, you brought in AJ Brown, you traded for AJ Brown, a couple other, top defensive guys. You signed CJ Garner-Johnson. I think it's sort of like, kind of like the rough, style, like the Philly style that I think, people are accustomed, Eagle fans are accustomed to. So I think that they're kind of playing that particular style. And look, I think Jalen Hurts is sort of like one of those guys where he has a lot of extra motivation, especially, we'll talk about that as it goes. But, some people thought that maybe he would be a good fit, especially when he got hurt a couple of years ago. A lot of people that were going to give the job to Garner Minshew. He's able to kind of come back and, sort of be consistent. He got, his 15th rushing touchdown this year. That's the most by any QB in NFL history. So look, you give credit to everybody. It was a total team effort. This has been a great team win by this Eagles squad, and this could be a squad that, look, can they? I'm not gonna say they're gonna be ready for a dynasty, but they got a young enough squad where they can perhaps be at least be around for at least a couple of years, if nothing else.
Yeah. Yes, and plus you don't have to pay Jalen Hurts yet, so you still have about 2 or 3 years before that happens. I believe he came in the same year as Justin Fields, if I'm not mistaken. So they're on the same career timeline. Before we break for the bottom of the hour, Lakina, we talk about Jalen Hurts perhaps being an MVP candidate. He didn't have to do too much yesterday, as I mentioned. He passed for only 121 yards, but it was Philadelphia's rushing game. They had 44 carries, 148 yards as a team. But look at these stats that was spread around. Kenneth Gainwell had 14 carries for 48 yards. Miles Sanders, who's been the main guy all year, he had 2 rushing touchdowns off of 11 carries for 42 yards. Of course, Jalen Hurts had 39 rushing yards. Boston Scott, who was the man for them a couple years ago during the whole Carson Wentz, Nick Foles era when he was a rookie the year after they won. He had a rushing touchdown yesterday, 21 yards rushing overall. So Philadelphia's rush offense is very impressive. Yes, a lot of that has to do with their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, but they have 3 or 4 capable running backs. The names I just ran off, they can take over a game as well. They get a couple of them can take over by themselves, or they just do it by committee like they did yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's sort of kind of indicative to what what coaching too. I mean, Nick Sirianni is probably one of he should definitely be he is actually one of the finalists for coach of the year, because but I feel like he still doesn't get his due, because he's been kind of like guys that a few stars here, a few like journeyman, a couple of journeyman guys, a couple of young guys that probably would not have gotten a second look. He's been able to kind of get together and make him a pretty solid team. I remember there were some people were saying that were the Eagles frauds. Well, they're going to the Super Bowl, back to the Super Bowl. So I guess they're not really frauds. They're doing that. So I don't know. But look, I want to go back to San Francisco for a second before we go to bringing over kind of up against it. But did you really think that? I don't, there are some folks that are saying, well, look, could Kaepernick have, done something? But I don't think so. I mean, that defense was playing really solid. So I don't care who you are. I don't care. Look, they could have gotten Sid here off the street. No one was going to, no, that Eagles defense, had a plan, and they were able to execute it well.
I couldn't agree with you more.
All right, so we're gonna go on the flip side. On the other side of this break, we're gonna go about the AFC championship game. All the weirdness, all the bad calls, or dumb penalties, however you want to look at it. Just still so much going on with the AFC title game, and I wish we had a clip of Travis Kelce after the game, because he's a gem, so. But even still, we'll talk about all that too coming up next. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown, Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. We're counting the AFC Championship game right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Oh, sorry. Welcome back to the Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeem McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, at CK80, that's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter, and Akina's going to be on the IG.
Just a programming note, our guys, What's Up Cuz with Jason Palmer and Coach Lancey Irving. Catch them tonight at 6 p.m. right here on Sports Zone Chicago. They're going to have former Bear Chris Zorich on their program to discuss Kevin Warren becoming the new president and CEO of the Chicago Bears. Of course, if you know the backstory, Chris Zorich was represented by Kevin Warren when Chris Zorich was a player back in the day. So they'll get into that and a whole lot more in what's the future for the Chicago Bears. So once again, Tune in to a special edition of What's Up Cuz with Jason Palmer and Coach Lance D. Irvin. That's tonight at 6 p.m. exclusively right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakina, let's get back to it by discussing the AFC Championship game where the Kansas City Chiefs hold off the Cincinnati Bengals and get their revenge from what happened a year ago about this time on the same field, defeating the Bengals 23-20. Mr. Patrick Mahomes, who had an injured ankle, but he had 326 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Joe Burrow had 4 carries for 30 yards for Cincinnati. And in the receiving department, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the former Green Bay Packer, had 6 catches for 116 yards and a touchdown for Kansas City.
Yeah, it was definitely a strange game all around. I mean, you thought that the fact that the defense for the Chiefs, got to Burrow early with a couple of sacks. You thought that maybe, maybe they're starting to kind of blow things out, but then, Sissy comes back and they score a touchdown that ties the game, and then all the weirdness, ensued after that. I mean, I know there was some calls, during that, the Chiefs possession beforehand, they had they think they had 3rd and 9 twice, but ended up putting the ball anyway. I know a lot of Chiefs fans are saying, oh, it's rigged, it's this and that. I mean, look, you still had not 1, but 2 shots to still win that game, Bengals fans, remember? You had the ball left. I mean, Burrow got sacked, and there was some incomplete pass. There were some key drops late. So I think for folks to, and look, Joseph Yesai, I mean, look, I feel for him because he made a crucial penalty, pushing as Mahomes was already, getting out of bounds, basically, bouncing on one leg, basically. Poor, we'll get to his injury in the second time on Mahomes, but yeah, I mean, that set up the field goal for Harrison Buckner, and they were able to go back. This is their 4th or 3rd trip in the last 5 years. I'm talking about the Chiefs, so it's definitely look. There's so many things going around. I mean, I know that, we'll get to all that nurse does and does with all the, the stuff that went on afterwards, but it's just one of those days where, look, we said it was going to, come down to, the last team to have possession wins. It just turns out it was Kansas City.
Yes. And what was one of the big reasons why Cincinnati won the game last year, Lakina? It was running the football. I know they had 71 total rushing yards as a team, but they didn't run the ball particularly well. Outside of Joe Burrow's 30 yards, Sammy P. Ryan, who had an early touchdown, he only had 5 carries for 22 yards. But here's the big statistic that should stand out to people. Joe Mixon, 8 carries for only 19 yards, 2.4 yards per rush. That's not going to get it done. His longest run was 7 yards, so he even had a worse performance if you take out that 7-yard run early in the game. Now, I thought they established themselves early with Jamar Chase, who ended up with 6 catches for 75 yards overall. T. Higgins had 83 yards on the same amount of receptions. But outside of that, their running game was pretty much non-existent. I know they got Joe Burrow on his feet a little bit, so that was kind of surprising, unlike a year ago. But I just felt like Kansas City's defense, we all know it's not the greatest in the world, but they have opportunistic defense. But Cincinnati just couldn't put that pedal to the metal to basically put their game away. And their lack of commitment to the run, in my opinion, will ultimately cost them the ball game.
Yeah, Chris Jones made some big sacks. I mean, I know that he doesn't get a lot of pub as he should, but he's one of the reasons why the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl, because he's made some big plays the last couple of games, and I feel like he doesn't get his due. And look, I mean, yeah, you can say that there were opportunists. I'm talking about the Chiefs, but they were able to they got to Burrow early, and they gave up some plays in the secondary, but when it counted, it was that front 7 from the Chiefs. I mean, yeah. That front 7, the Justin Reeds, of course, the Jones, the Frank Clarks. I mean, those were the guys that kind of got it going and kind of made the big plays when they needed to. So I think for me, I think the Chiefs defense was the ones that really kind of stuck this game out for them. And look, the Bengals, they had their chances. Yeah, you can say that, that the whole 3rd and 9, 3 times or whatever, that's going to be the running joke. But they still had not 1, but 2 chances to win that game. So you couldn't capitalize on that. So for anybody that says, oh, it's rigged, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. No, go back to the tape. They had their shot to win it, and it would have been a moot point. They just couldn't capitalize. Simple as that.
And what the gameplay was going in with Patrick Mahomes' injury, his mobility was going to be limited. And I know Kansas City had him out on a couple of bootlegs early, but he was basically in that pocket, and you could tell after every throw he was limping off that ankle. And Cincinnati did get to him 3 times, but it wasn't enough. And so I'll give the OC for the Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy, credit for that was a perfect game plan. You notice that even though Kansas City didn't get the yards, total rushing yards, they only had 42 as a team for the game. They used to. We said this on Friday. They was going to use a whole lot more screens. They only need to get the running backs involved a little bit more. But as the game went on, Patrick Mahomes felt more confident because he didn't have to run around that pocket as much. He started to pick that Cincinnati secondary apart.
Yeah, I think he was able to do just that. And look, he did just enough. I mean, you could tell that he was, that Mahomes was limping on that leg. And, you could tell that he's, especially once he moved, towards like the different parts. Once he moved to his left side, he re-aggravated that. You could tell that he was just like, it was bloody too. I think I saw, gymnast and Tony Romo say that it was bloody at times. So you can tell that there's still something going on with that ankle. So that this is why you get 2 weeks off. I know some people have been saying that we should go back to just 1 week in between. That's why you have 2 weeks off, because Juju Smith-Schuster got banged up. I think Miko Harmon also got banged up as well.
Yes, he did.
So there are a lot of guys on the Chiefs that are banged up. So if you're Andy Reid, you appreciate that 2 weeks break in between.
Yes, and he's just like Bill Belichick, or as I call him on the show, Bill Belichick. Give him 2 weeks to prepare. He's going to have close to a perfect game plan for you. You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Hall Chicago, the Monday edition. We're live in the 11 color. I'm Sid Deslakina. Any other nuggets? Any other nuggets that you want to tell from the AFC title game? Obviously, it was the best competitive game out of the 2 games yesterday, but I saw something on social media. I sent it to you last night. I forgot who the player was for Cincinnati. He's like, "Why did you hit that quarterback?"
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. So you save that for the locker room because, campers are all around. They're going to pick up any and everything that you say. And number 2, it really didn't come down to that. Your offense has had enough chances to basically separate themselves from Kansas City, and that didn't happen. And like you said, Travis Kelce after the post game, of course, there's a video going around with Patrick Mahomes' father going in, as the kids would say, on Joe Burrow as well. I thought it wasn't too personal, but they made it Burrow is not going to pick a fight with them. They were basically having fun with both of them yesterday.
Yeah. Going to that call for a second with Jermaine Pratt, the linebacker. I mean, look, you're frustrated, you lose. I mean, look, you're going to say stuff like that. I mean, yeah, you want to say it for the locker room, but the emotions run high. So, of course, you got microphones and cameras all around now. That young lady, I forgot the young lady's name who originated that video. She covers the Bengals and the Ohio State athletics as well. So, I mean, look, you're going to get those types of reactions. I mean, I would like to, it's not a long flight from KC to Cincinnati, but I'm sure it was a long flight because I'm sure there are probably some players who feel the same way Pratt does. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I know, and I understand that some people were very upset that Osai, Joseph Osai, who made that crucial penalty, that the cameras were on him. He was in tears. I mean, look, that's just how it is. I mean, you're going to have celebration on one end and you're going to have, despair on the other. That's just how it is. Look, we're going to be seeing this in about 7 weeks with the NCAA tournament. So if you're going to have a problem with it, then you're going to have a problem with it when they do it in the tournament in about 6 or 7 weeks. So I think people need to kind of just chill on that. Mental health and stuff. Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen this happen in various parts before in various sports. It happens. Some guys were able to bounce back. Some folks weren't. So that's just how it is sometimes. Now, as far as just want to finish this point here. But yeah, I kind of feel like that wasn't the only reason why they lost the game. They had chances after that. So your offense, like you said, the offense. He should be Pratt should be at the offense too because they had their shot twice to win that game.
Yeah, guilty as O.J. Simpson back in 1994. One of the main reasons why we watch sports because of the emotions, but both good and bad. Now, I get your point, Lakeem, but we shouldn't have cameras on players who are crying too much, but that's a part of the game. And
no, I wasn't saying that. We get the
say
that, not me. Those are other folks saying that, not me.
Right. But
I feel the same way you do.
Yeah, but put the mental health issues aside. You know, especially football players that get themselves mentally prepared as hard as anybody else to play a game for 2.5, 3 hours, and you're exhausted when it's all said and done. So, how do you let it out? Especially when you lose, some people cry, some people just so exhausted. But when you win, like Kansas City did yesterday, you're overflow with joy, and that's the way it is. So, like you said, we're going to see it in the NCAA tournament. Yes, there are young men transitioning into adulthood, but with these NFL players, they're grown men. So that some of them are not too different from the college players we're going to watch in a few weeks.
And they showed this state to also Little League. Those guys are even younger than them. So I've seen ESPN do that at times, not all the time, but I've seen them do that. So I think people just need to kind of just it's not that serious. It's just sports, and look, it's passionate. Sports is the best reality show. And I think that's why we love sports so much. It's the ultimate reality show. It's not scripted. And look, crazy things happen. Great things happen, and then still stupid things happen. So that's that's sports at a high level.
Yes, you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid Deslakina. We're live and living color on Sports Zone Chicago. We're about to get to our studs and duds from yesterday's games. Before we move on, I'll start with my 3 studs. Christian McCaffrey for San Francisco, Miles Sanders with the 2 touchdowns for Philadelphia, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling with the touchdown reception off of 6 catches for 160 yards as Kansas City moves on to Super Bowl 57.
Mine are Hassan Reddick, who I really like. I hate that Arizona wasn't able to keep him, but look, he went to Philadelphia, has 2 big sacks and a big tackle. Actually, essentially not Purdy out the game, because he hit his elbow hit his helmet. I'm talking about Reddick's Purdy's elbow hit Reddick's helmet. I'll also say Mahomes, basically for playing on one leg and actually threw for 326 yards and 2 touchdowns. You can tell that he's not 100%. So got to give him credit for that. And look, I'm gonna say it, Chris Jones. I think Chris Jones was the reason why he made the big plays early and late in the game. So that was sort of big reasons why the Chiefs were able to be set up to kind of be prepared to have the last team to have the ball and end up winning that game.
3 duds for me. Kyle Shanahan of the 49ers, Josh Johnson. I'm not going to blame everything on him, but it's a responsibility of the coaches to get your players prepared, ready to play for any situation. It didn't seem like that was happening yesterday. My second dud is the Cincinnati rush offense. Even though they outgained Kansas City by 31 yards, 71 yards total as a team, that's not going to get it done. So those are my duds.
Mine are, I'm going to say the San Fran defense. Stupid penalties. They had like 3 in that drive that kind of broke the game open when they still had a shot to win it. D'Amico Reyes, I know he's been getting a lot of calls. I guess he's going to get a second interview with Houston coming up this week. But was your mind on that? Was your mind not on getting your team ready for to go back to the Super Bowl? 3 total penalties? Really? In that one drive, I think they had like 8 penalties cold because Trent Williams had a stupid one that near the end. I mean, I flipped the game off by then, but that was not very good. Where was some of like those big plays? Where was the Bengals defense? I mean, they made some key stops early, but they are late in the game where they really needed to. That's the U-side penalty aside, there were some other silly things. They gave away too many plays, especially that secondary, and Mahomes, even though with a bad ankle, we were able to expose that. And let me see, who else would I say? I'll say the Cincinnati Mayor, Aftab Purival. That whole silly video that you did, basically calling out KC. I guess Travis Kelce kind of told you where to go, you jabroni. So, I mean, protect that man at all costs, Mr. Kelce, and he's just a great delight. He's probably one of the best players in the game. I know there's gonna be. I know Fox is gonna have a great job profiling him in these next 2 weeks. But those are my 3 duds.
All right, let's go. Before we get to our main topic to wrap up this first hour, a couple of news and nuggets to pass along from the NFL world of the NFL. I'm watching Colin Cowherd right now. Sean Payton is talking to him. Of course, I can't get any transcripts because we're running our show. Of course, Sean Payton was up for a couple of interviews over the last few weeks as far as head coaching vacancies are concerned. As of right now, he's returning to Fox. You're going to see him on the Super Bowl coverage less than 2 weeks from now, 13 days to be exact. And speaking of the LA Chargers, Kellen Moore, the now former offensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys, he'll be the new OC for the Chargers.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, especially that was kind of a surprise that they mutually decided to part ways about him in Dallas earlier this weekend. I guess we'll see if he can. I know Justin Herbert just had surgery on his shoulder, his throwing shoulder. So maybe once his shoulder feels better, and I think Kellen Moore we saw what he did with Dak. Dak didn't do too well sometimes in that offense of his. So we'll see how if Herbert can do differently. So. Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting though in Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego, Orange County, wherever the whole area. So yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see. He's definitely gonna be under scrutiny this coming season.
All right, Lakina, if you're a Chicago Bears fan, which of these 4 teams from yesterday would you like the Bears to model? Do you like them to be modeled after the Eagles, the Bengals, the 49ers, or the Chiefs? And the reason why I brought up this question is because she's a guest on Shannon Meyer's show on Sports Zone Chicago every so often. Her name is Alyssa Barbieri. She covers the Bears for Bears Wire. That's part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. She put out an article yesterday regarding some free agents from all 4 teams that played yesterday. I won't go through all the names. I'll just go through some of the key names. I'll ask you your opinion. Here's some of the free agents from the 4 teams that were playing yesterday. From the 49ers, right tackle Mike McClinchy, he wears number 69. I don't think he'll be a bad choice.
Yeah, I mean, they need O-line help, and he's actually a pretty good O-lineman. But like I said, I mean, it's going to depend on what the salary cap situation is. You thought that maybe they're going to have like 190, then it got revised to like 80, and then I know that the NFL kind of adjusted it back up, so we won't get a full number. They still probably going to have like one of the top, maybe like 70 or 80 million or something like that. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can get some of these guys. I know T. Higgins is a name that's been brought up as well for the Bears. I mean. Look, I mean, Justin Fields, I don't want him throwing the ball a lot. I don't. And I think he probably needs to have that receiver. Higgins, has made some big plays for Cincy, so we'll see what happens. But it's gonna be very interesting to see if they can get him. He's probably gonna be like he's younger, so he probably wouldn't cost that much. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if maybe T. Higgins. I've heard I think who else? I think I've heard a couple other names for the 49ers being brought up.
Yeah,
you might have it on you, Sid, but
okay. Right tackle Mike McClinchy, he's 27 years old. The edge rusher from the 49ers, number 56, Samson Ikubam, he's also at age 27. Like I said, we know that the Bears can use a couple of pass rushers. I believe they'll draft 1 or 2 in this draft. So we'll see what happens with that. Also, a free agent from the 49ers, offensive lineman Daniel Brunskill. He wears jersey number 60. He's at age 28. And defensive tackle, he's at age 27, Maurice Hurst.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a name that the Bears could probably look at. I'm talking about Mr. Hurst, so it could be somebody. I know edge rusher. I mean, that's been a big problem for the Bears, especially since Roquan Smith is gone. So I'm wondering, would that be something? Look, I'm at that point where I just need to, just get somebody. I mean, I know you want to, some teams may want to. I would rather the Bears try to emulate after Philly what they're doing, kind of mix it up. Get a couple of, try to get a couple of receivers, maybe get a couple of edge rushers like a Fletcher Cox or somebody like that. So I would say that maybe Philly is probably would be the best team that have with the Bears to emulate. So maybe.
Yeah. Speaking of Philadelphia, key free agents from this squad, defensive tackle Javon Hargrove. He's their edge, their defensive tackle. He's at age 30. So you think he'll cost a little bit more? He in terms of NFL, he's going to quote unquote senior citizen years. Defensive back James Bradbury, who was cut by the New York Giants last year. Of course, he's having a great year for Philadelphia. He's at age 30. And left tackle Andre Dillard, he's age 28.
Dillard might be an intriguing name, I think, just because I think that's probably what the Bears need. But like I said before, I'm going to need this, to know more what the cap situation is going to be for the Bears. It's going to be more or less than what's been reported. We've seen, different numbers now in the last few days. So I don't know. I mean, look, it's going to be interesting to see if, this, I think 224, just under 225 million is what the cap's going to be. That's what the NFL told teams about an hour ago. So it's going to be interesting how that number is going to shake out. They're not going to, I doubt Ryan Poles is going to spend all of that money. We'll
like
see.
I said, it's 2 years from now. You got to worry about Justin Fields, and if he's healthy and he continues to improve, the price tag for these franchise quarterbacks, they go up every year. So I know Ryan Poles has got to think about the future too. So like you said, many Bears fans want them to spend all this money this offseason. I'm happy to disappoint you, but that's not going to happen.
It's sort of, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what they do and who's going to be out there for a trade or for a contract. It's just, we just don't know at this point what the story is going to be. So
yeah,
just a couple.
Just a couple of the names. Of course, Miles Sanders is a free agent running back from Philadelphia. I don't think the Bears are going to get him. We'll see what happens, what they do with David Montgomery first, who's also a free agent. From Kansas City, Juju Smith-Schuster, he's at age 27. I don't know. That's a big question mark for me. Left tackle Orlando Brown Jr., he's at age 27. Now, I wouldn't mind the Bears taking a look at him since the Bears need a left tackle. And right tackle Andrew Wiley, he wears number 77, the offensive lineman for Kansas City. And you mentioned he was injured yesterday. Wide receiver Mecole Hardman, he's at age 25 from Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that, this has been like a second injury. I'm talking about Harmon, so that might be a name of Bears may avoid. But like I said, I mean, look, I want to see what Ryan Poles does. I mean, that's going to be kind of like the thing, like how much money will be available for the, for the Bears to spend. I mean, that's going to be the thing. I mean, I'm waiting to see. I mean, he learned from a couple of top folks down in Kansas City. But yeah, I want to see how he does up here and how much leeway is he going to have. So that's going to be kind of like the thing.
And lastly, from Cincinnati, a couple of key free agents. Safety Von Bell from the Bengals, he's at age 28. Tight end Hayden Hurst, he's at age 29, also from Cincinnati. I think the Bears should take a look at him. You saw he had a great playoff run for Cincinnati. He had a great year overall, but he was definitely big in the playoffs, especially in the victory over Buffalo last week. And linebacker Jermaine Pratt, who wears number 57, also from Cincinnati, he's at age 26.
Yeah, that's the guy that made that comment about, why do you touch the quarterback? So, I mean, look, I mean, I think of course you won't look at any of those names. I mean, there would be good names to all look at. But like I said, I want to see what the cap situation is for real. I know I keep harping on that, but I'm going to need to see what the exact number is, because they probably still don't know themselves yet. So, it's going to be interesting to see if, I know the Bears will probably be the top, but Poles isn't going to spend all that money. So it's all going to depend on what's available, what the resource is, and where do you spend it on? Do you spend it on some lineman help? Do you spend it on getting a front seven guy or an edge rusher? Do you draft that? Do you get another receiver? I don't know. I mean, that's going to be really the thing that they're going to have to look for. So it's going to be interesting to see what Poles does. Look, we got a couple months before we got to figure that out.
Yeah, the free agency period for the NFL begins. The league new year begins March 13th, and the NFL draft will be held on April 27th. Lakina, our number one has come to a close, but our number two will be filled with a whole lot of fun straight ahead. As you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago on the Monday edition, we'll talk about the Bulls. They finally won a game. They blew out an opponent. Yay! Does that mean anything, or is doomsday just around the corner ahead of the February 9th trade deadline? Also, we'll get into the best and the worst what happened around the league over the weekend. And we had to get into some college basketball, the Fighting Illini. They're starting to get hot at the right time. Should we take them seriously as a top contender in the Big Ten? And plus a whole lot more in Old School TV Monday. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You're listening to the Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean, you're so
Do you know that you're in my lane?
No, not at all.
Are you not paying attention? Are you texting?
I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6.
It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Monday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Mr. Kimmy, who is she. I am Sydney Brownhead. That's me. You can follow your chili on the Twitter and the IG at CK80. Once again, it's CK80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow me at Kingdom again on the Twitter and at Kingdom again on the IG.
If you have any questions or comments for us during our now less than hour of sports talk extravaganza, you can always hit us up in the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder that Sports Zone Chicago, you can also watch now available on Roku TV. Lakina, let's kick off hour number 2 by discussing the buckets. But first, we'll go to the NBA and the Bulls at large first. After the Bulls suffered 2 terrible losses last week at Indiana at Charlotte, they bounced back last Saturday night with a big 128-109 win over the Orlando Magic on the road. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan both had 32 points each. Nikolai Vucevic had 26 points and 13 rebounds. Patrick Williams stepped up big, especially in the fourth quarter. He had 16 points and 6 rebounds overall. Lakina, what most impressed me about this Bulls victory on Saturday, one, that they actually blew out an opponent for once, and it almost played a 48-minute contest. But the one thing that stood out to me, Lakina, we talked about this the last few weeks. They started to get Vooch more involved in the offense, especially in the post. And number 2, they had 30 total assists as a team.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that was impressive. I mean, you did what you're supposed to do to a team that you're better than. I know league got down to 8, I think about halfway through the fourth, or maybe like a third through the fourth, but they were able to get it back, going and then such. I mean, look, Patrick Williams has 16 points. That's the most he's scored in a while. 32 points for Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan. Another, of course, a double-double from Vooch, 26 and 13 boards for him. So, yeah, so a solid kind of like all-around win for the Bulls. I mean, probably their best win and much needed win because they needed that win, if nothing else, for their psyche. So, yeah, you did what you're supposed to do against a team that you're better than. I mean, the Magic, I know they're not, you got Punchero, who's been, great this year, this rookie year. You got, Wendell Carter Jr., Fonz Wagner, and such. But yeah, I mean, this is a team. They should have blown this team out. They should have blown them up by more, if we're being honest. But but yeah, look, a solid win for the Bulls. I mean, look, they're still right there in the thick of it for that play-in spot. They're actually not that far back from being a 6th seed. So that's why for anybody that wants to see trades, it's not going to happen. Casey Johnson, who does a great job, covering the Bulls for NBC Sports Chicago, that's not happening. So even he and others have said the same thing. So I think unfortunately, Lonzo's not going to play again this year. It looks like, unfortunately, so that's a bummer.
Yeah, I heard those comments from Billy Donovan after Saturday night's game. Yeah,
that's it.
We kind of knew. We kind of knew that, Lakina. We was hoping against hope, but it's just a shame. First of all, we wish Lonzo Ball the best in his recovery. I know he has to think about life after basketball at some point, so that goes into that decision as well. But we bring up the point guard situation. Ayo Dosunmu, I think he's had a slight improvement from last year, but in certain instances, head coach Billy Donovan still doesn't trust him. I know Alex Caruso's beginning to run at point guard, even though he's becoming more of a player off the bench. And also to Goran Dragic, if he was 10 years younger, he'll probably be a starting point guard right now, but at his age and the amounts that he's had on those tires, he's best suited coming off the bench. And both Dragic and Caruso both did a great job scoring. Both of them combined scoring 14 of the 19 points off the bench for the Bulls on Saturday. Both players scoring 7 points each.
And by the Scott was keep saying it best. I mean, if they beat the teams they're supposed to be, we're talking about the Bulls, they have a good playoff spot. I mean, yes. You're right. Yes. You're right, Lamont. You're right. I mean, we know how the Bulls have done against the bad teams. We know they have a good record against the good teams. It's been the bad teams that they haven't been able to beat for whatever reason. So
it's the opposite of what happened last year.
Yeah, it was like, do they play down in their competition or such? I mean, do they kind of just, those teams, catch them sleeping at the wheel with them? So yeah, so I'm hoping that this is sort of like starts a trend, I guess. I mean, we'll see. They get it. They don't play against it tomorrow. They got to play the Clippers at the UC. That should be a fun matchup. It looks like they're starting to kind of figure these out. The Clippers, watch they beat them, because that's what the Bulls have done this year. So, it should be. It could be like first to 130 probably wins this game. So this could be a high scoring affair tomorrow. The Clippers and the Bulls. So it should be a fun one. Going to be watching this, of course, on NBC Sports Chicago and such. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting. This game. But yeah, I mean, I hope. It was like, I don't know if Dragic's going to be able to play. I know he's missed the last couple of games and such, but Dragic is better off the bench anyway at this point. So that's kind of been what they say that with Drummond, say with the other guys too. If I can see this from P. Will more often, I'd be less worried about him and such. But yeah, I mean, look, a nice for the Bulls. I mean, look, let's hope they can kind of get a little bit of a streak together before the All-Star break.
And also, too, another player that has impressed me, I know he was injured around this time last year, but he's starting to come around of sorts, and that's Derrick Jones Jr. Remember last year, looking before he got hurt, he came in and filled in for minutes, especially when the players were going down with COVID and before Lonzo Ball got hurt. I know he's a small forward, but he's a tweener. He can play the two-guard position. He can play the small forward position, and when the Bulls go small, he can get up and down the floor. He can play a little defense too. So Derrick Jones Jr. has really come alive with that energy these last few weeks.
Yeah, I really love. It all started in that game against in Paris against Detroit. So he definitely kind of started a little bit of a step. He started to kind of turn the corner a little bit. Look, when he's healthy, Derrick Jones Jr. is a good utility guy. So we the last couple of games. So I think that's sort of like a thing that you really need, especially if you're a Bulls team that's still. Look, you're still right there in the middle for a playoff spot. So I think people need to just kind of not worry about that. Now, in closing, though, the Lonzo Ball thing, I mean, look, it's unfortunate, but this is one of the reasons why I was a little bit, hesitant when they signed him. This could happen, and unfortunately, that's happening. So hopefully, get healthy. Maybe he can come back next year. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, that's not very encouraging, from Coach Donovan's comments over the weekend.
You're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, the Monday edition. We're live in the living color. I'm Sid. That's okay. We're discussing the Bulls in the NBA at large. If you have a question or comment for us regarding the Bulls in the NBA, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. What's up, Brandon Schultz? Shuts.
Hey,
Hope
Brandon.
everything is well for you. We're about to get into the rest of the NBA here for you and for everybody else. Lakina, I want
We'll tell you about that in a second. We'll tell you about that in a little bit, Brendan. So don't worry, hang tight.
Yeah.
He was
I want to
asking
go
about the games for the rest of the week. But yeah, let's go to
I want to
yesterday's
go off
action.
script a little bit, Lakina. Let's go to Saturday night's contest between the Lakers and the Celtics. Of course, the Celtics beat the Lakers 125-121 in overtime. LeBron James, who's chasing down Kareem's career scoring record, he had 41 points, but that wasn't the story. The story was bad officiating on both sides, and LeBron James was begging and pleading like he was Teddy Pendergrass, James Brown, and Eddie Levert all combined. He was fouled when he was trying to drive into the lane for a layup to perhaps give the Lakers the victory, but it was all for naught. The game was sent into overtime, and the Celtics took over from there. But did you check out Patrick Beverly, Chicago's very own? He picked up a camera from where I don't know, but he was trying to show it to the referee, whoever else was watching. I didn't get that part. I knew about LeBron James, begging and pleading his case, but Patrick Beverly, you're talking about putting on a dramatic performance. He did just that. I'm using air quotes here.
The thing with that was that, of course, you could have said that there should have been a foul called on Tatum. He did grab LeBron's arm. They actually admitted they wait till like after the game. They didn't wait till like 24 hours like the Bulls have had to deal with a couple of times this year. But the whole camera thing, I guess someone saw it. I guess Pat Bev got called for a technical, and that's how the Celtics were able to get that early lead because of that. And I guess he was trying to show. I think he got it from like one of the photographers, I guess, on the courts or on the sideline. And I guess he was trying to show them that, hey, look, you missed a call, and look, only someone for the West. Only someone for the West Side of Chicago would do something like that. Of course he would. But I mean, look, the Lakers should have won that game, in the appearance simple, and unfortunately, they didn't. And of course, Boston was able to kind of take advantage of that missed call against Tatum, and they end up winning in overtime. So a nice, look, of course, it's gonna be a little one of those losses where Lakers are probably gonna be kicking themselves over. So
yes, and just like the Bulls had plenty of bad losses this year, and this one would definitely hurt the Lakers if they don't make it to the play-in tournament. Remember, the Lakers had a big lead in this game, but they blew it. And like you said, that non-call kind of epitomizes what happened to the Lakers last Saturday. On the flip side for Boston, Jaylen Brown had 37 points, and Jason Tatum, who struggled shooting, including 3 of 11 from three-point range, he still ended up with 30 points, and he made some big baskets late.
Yeah, he did. And I'm going back to that early part of that triple header on ABC. You got Philadelphia and Denver, of course. Jokic and Murray still didn't play, but Joel Embiid was able to kind of take advantage of that. And 126-119 when I'm talking about Embiid. He had 47 points, which ties a career. Actually, it's not even a career. I think he scored 50 before, but this is 33rd career 40-point, 10 rebound game. The only player to do that the most since the NBA ABA merger was Shaq. He did it 43 times. MJ only did it 33 times. So go. That's crazy there. James Harden, of course, kicked in with 17 points and 13 assists. So I mean, I know that Jokic only had 24, which is kind of like an off night for him. Murray only had 22. So both those guys kind of had an off night. So they were coming back from missing a couple of games. But I mean, look, the Sixers were able to kind of take advantage of some key mistakes by the Nuggets late.
Yeah, and the Nuggets were big at halftime, but as you mentioned, Philadelphia came back with some key defensive stops. Like I said, it was spearheaded by Joel Embiid, and also too, Tobias Harris has made a nice addition back to the starting lineup since he returned from injury. Also too, Tyrese Maxey, he had 13 points off the bench in 31 minutes of action. Those two guys, I believe, is key to helping Embiid if Philadelphia wants to get to where they want to go. And one other thing about Joel Embiid, he's definitely top 3, in my opinion, top 2 candidate for MVP this year, next to Jason Tatum of Boston.
Yeah, Jokic
his name is back in the conversation for good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the key is going to be for him to stay healthy. So that whole thing there. Brooklyn beat the Knicks 122-115. Kyrie had 32 points there. Again, they kind of have to hold down the floor with, of course, with KD being out, he's going to be out for another couple of weeks. But they were able to kind of sustain they were up big. They were able to kind of hold off a Knicks comeback, so they were able to hold them off by 7. And look, it's going to be interesting to see if if the Nets can kind of keep it up. I mean, Kyrie has been very nice. He hasn't said a word, so Seth Curry
Yeah.
can actually be pretty solid for them as well, 14 points. So sort of kind of the Nets are kind of going back to kind of being the Nets that we thought that would be before, kind of holding it down until KD can come back from his injury.
Another team that's on the road right now and on the East Coast road trip, as we mentioned, they'll play the Bulls here in Chicago tomorrow night at the UC. That's Los Angeles Clippers. They were on the back-to-back last night. They get blown out by Cleveland 122-99. But on Saturday, I actually had a chance to catch this game live. They beat the Atlanta Hawks 120-113. Kawhi Leonard had 32 points, while Paul George added 23. Lakina, as we said before, if this Clippers team stays healthy, in particular those two guys I just mentioned, they could be almost impossible to beat, especially with other teams that are down right now due to injuries with Phoenix and New Orleans, which I know we'll talk about in a minute. They gave up another 50 piece, I believe, last night. Mm-hmm. So the Clippers looks like they started to turn it into form, and we gave head coach Tyronn Lue credit last year with both those guys being out. They were still able to make it to the play-in tournament before they ran out against the Minnesota Timberwolves. But if this team stays healthy, they should be a top 4 team in the West, as we predicted before the season started.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting if they can keep it up. I mean, I know that they've had both PG and Kawhi sit every other game for low management. I get that, but let's hope that maybe after the All-Star break, maybe we'll start seeing them a little bit more. So yeah, they can kind of move up in the standings with other guys being hurt or taking games off. So it was a nice win for them against Atlanta. I know they got their butts kicked by Cleveland. Of course, the back-to-back, and I think Kawhi, neither PG or Kawhi played that game on Sunday yesterday. So, but yeah, so a nice win for the Clippers and such. But Utah beat Dallas 108-100. Lauri Markkanen, of course, I think he's kind of making his case for a comeback player of the year.
And he should be an all-star next month.
He'll probably be a reserve. He had 29 points, what ties a season high for him. A couple of guys off the bench, kicked in. Of course, Malik Beasley had 19 points off the bench for them as well. Colin Sexton had 12 points for the Jazz off the bench. I know Luka didn't play, I should say, but Dinwiddie had 35 points, kind of leading the way there, but didn't really get too much help from other guys after that. So I know Luka took that game off because, of course, he's still nursing that ankle injury. But but a nice win for Utah.
Yeah, another team that's struggling in the rest of the conference right now, as I mentioned a moment ago, the New Orleans Pelicans. They now are 1 game above 500 at 26-25 after losing to Milwaukee Bucks on the road last night, 135-110. Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's still an MVP candidate, he dropped a 50 piece for the Milwaukee Bucks, and he was, as we said before, Lakina, that young man is just unstoppable, and he's now entering his late 20s. Imagine how many more years that we have of this great young talent. I remember him coming into the league about 7-8 years ago, and some people said that he had the potential of doing this. Not too many people believe, some folks at the time, but look what he's doing now. And you could argue that he's one of the best mobile big men ever, especially the way the league is being played today.
Yeah, that 50 points, of course, I think 30 of those points came from the paint. That's the 10th time in his career that he scored 30 points from the paint in a game. The only other player to do that, of course, for at least 10 games since that actually became a thing, was Shaq. He did at least, I think about 12 times did that in his career. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing with the Pelicans, I know that they're struggling right now. I know Zion's still out. So, that's kind of, not helping them a little bit. I mean, they also lost to the Wizards too. So they've lost back-to-back. I don't know if Pelicans fans should be, a little upset, but, it is what it is with that one. But, a very, So, again, looks like Milwaukee's starting to figure it out a little bit. We'll see if Chris Middleton will be back and, be a factor there as well. So that game, yesterday was, interesting, to see Giannis putting on a show. Now, Memphis beat the Pacers, I should say, 112-100, and the Hornets upset Miami, 122-117. Terry Rozier had a season high 31. unfortunately, they just couldn't get going on offense, and the Miami's kind of going back into the sort of like the bad habits, if you will. So, they just couldn't hit the shots into the third quarter. The third quarter, definitely killed them.
Yeah, a couple of notes from last Friday's games. The Raptors continue their losing ways. They lose to the Golden State Warriors 129-117. So the Raptors continue their West Coast road trip. And the Minnesota Timberwolves, speaking of those Grizzlies, it was important. The Grizzlies got back on track last night. They lost a heartbreaker at Minnesota on Friday, 111-100. Lakina, the Minnesota Timberwolves, we haven't talked about them much when the season started because they still suffering injuries from their big man, Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns. But D'Angelo Russell and they're being carried by Anthony Edwards. I thought he had a sneaky chance to be in the MVP conversation. But Minnesota, after all this, is still hanging on. I believe they're one game over 500. And they got to start getting some healthy guys back if they want to go back to the playoffs for the second year in a row.
Yeah, no, Karl Anthony Towns is still out, so we'll see if he's back. They're actually still a 5 seed, Minnesota is, so they're still right there in the playoff hunt. But it'll be interesting to see if they would be even better once they get guys, coming back and whatnot. If you look at the standings right now, I mean, Dallas, the Pelicans, the Suns, and the Jazz those are 4 that are in the playoff playing spots right now. You got the Thunder right behind them. I know the Trailblazers have lost a couple in a row, still like 3 of their last 4, unfortunately. So now they're on the outside looking in. Of course, the Lakers are kind of right there too on the outside looking in as well. They're 2 games back of Utah. So yeah, it's going to be after the second half of the season starts. It's going to be interesting to see there'll be a log jam of teams. Denver is number 1, Memphis is number 2, despite some of their losses. Sacramento is number 3. I don't think that's. I know they lost a couple in a row, and I don't think that they're going to be number 3 for very long. I just don't think that they're going to have I think they're going to run out of gas. It kind of reminds me of the Cleveland team from last year. They came in, out of the gate. They kind of ran out of gas late, and I think that's going to be what happened with the Kings. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's going to be the case with them. The Clippers are starting to kind of. I know they lost yesterday, but I know they're kind of starting to climb up a little bit in the standings as well. The Warriors, they're starting to kind of figure things out too, since Steph is back. They're kind of get their groove back as well. So for me, I think there's still a lot going on in the West. So. It's not a set. I know, could Denver still be the number 1 seed by the time the regular season is over? Sure, but I don't think that's going to happen either. So once guys start, coming back, I think they're going to be right there, kind of like in that, compete for that 1 seed.
Yeah, remind me to ask you a question about the entire league, Lakina, after we get through this schedule for this upcoming week right here on Second City Sports for the rest of the NBA. Starting with tonight's games, we'll have Orlando at this all Central Standard Time starts. So for tonight, Monday, we have Orlando and Philadelphia at 6 o'clock. The first game of the NBA TV Monday night doubleheader will feature the Los Angeles Lakers visiting the Brooklyn Nets. No Kevin Durant, but this game will still go on. That's at 6:30 p.m. tonight on NBA TV as the Lakers continue their East Coast road trip. At 7 o'clock, we'll have, speaking of the Sacramento Kings, they'll visit the Minnesota Timberwolves at 7 o'clock. Also at 7, Golden State at Oklahoma City. That could be a good sneaky game, so watch out for OKC. Also at 7 o'clock, we'll have Washington and San Antonio. At 7:30, Detroit at Dallas. 8 o'clock, Toronto at Phoenix. In the second half of tonight's NBA TV doubleheader will feature Atlanta and Portland. Trae Young versus Damian Lillard, or Dame Dollars, the kids call him.
Yeah, that should be a fun one. Going back to that first game of that doubleheader for NBA TV, it looks like LeBron and AD and a couple of guys will not play. So it looks like both teams are going to be shorthanded. So that's going to be a very interesting game. Regardless of the NBA TV folks are not happy with that. Of course, you have no KD. Now you're not going to have LeBron either or AD. So that's going to be something to look out for there as well. Now going into tomorrow's games, Miami and Cleveland. That should be a fun one at 6. The first game of the Tuesday night TNT doubleheader. It looks like we'll see if LeBron and AD will be back for this one. This is a back-to-back for the Lakers as they continue their East Coast road trip. You got them as they're facing next at MSG on TNT at 6:30. That should be a fun one as it always is.
LeBron always likes to put on a show at MSG, so I'll be shocked if he doesn't play tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, but he probably might. Of course, we mentioned the Clippers and the Bulls at 7 o'clock at the UC, and the Hornets and the Bucks should be a good one here. The second game of the TNT Tuesday night doubleheader. You got the Pelicans and the Nuggets. That should be a fun one. And I know this could be a nice get right game for the Pelicans, who have had their struggles lately.
Yeah. Going to Wednesday's schedule at 6 o'clock, we'll have Washington at Detroit. Also at 6 o'clock, we'll have Orlando at Philadelphia. At 6, we'll have Portland and Memphis. That's a strange start time for a Memphis game.
Yeah,
They're in the
it
same
is sort of.
time zone as us, the Central Time Zone. The
Yeah, it's a
first
little
game,
weird. That is a
yeah,
weird time slot, but yeah, there must be. I guess they're. I think with the stuff going on down there in Memphis, that might be why. I don't know if that's the
that
case,
could be.
but
That could be. Yeah,
that could be why. But it might be overthinking it, but yeah, that could be the reason why for the early start.
yeah, yeah. I didn't think about that, but yeah, didn't think about that situation going on in Memphis Police Department. But at this, the first game of that Wednesday night doubleheader for ESPN, we'll have the Brooklyn Nets at the Boston Celtics. At 7 o'clock on Wednesday, we'll have Oklahoma City at Houston. Also at 7, Golden State and Minnesota. Sacramento and San Antonio also at 7. At 8 o'clock, we'll have Toronto at Utah. And then to cap off that second half of the ESPN Wednesday night doubleheader, we'll have Atlanta at Phoenix.
Going back to that first game, of course, these two teams, talk about the Nets and the Celtics, played a good one earlier this year. Of course, with KD being out, that's going to be a whole nother thing. So they actually, the Nets actually were able to had a lead against the Celtics without KD. They just couldn't sustain it. So I'm sure they're going to be looking for revenge. So that should be a fun one on Wednesday. Now going to Thursday's games, of course, the Lakers and the Pacers. That should be a fun one. In Indianapolis at 6 o'clock. You got the first game of the TNT doubleheader, the Battle of the Young Guns. You got John Morant, who had a really solid game over the weekend. They'll face the Cavs at 6:30 against Donovan Mitchell. That should be a fun one at 6:30 on TNT. Miami and New York at 6:30. Of course, the Hornets, at the Bulls. So the Bulls should be able to win that game. You hope.
Yeah, they got some unfinished business with Michael Jordan's Hornets from what happened on last Thursday, but no one can blame themselves but the Bulls.
The Pelicans, the Pelicans, face the Mavs. That should be a fun one at 7:30. I'm a little surprised that this game is not the second half of the doubleheader, but that's strange as that is. But at 8 o'clock, you got the Warriors and the Nuggets. That should be a fun one. Could be a Western Conference playoff preview. We'll wait and see. And could this be a finals preview? The second half of that TNT Thursday doubleheader, the Clippers and the Bucks. That should be a fun one at 9 o'clock on TNT.
Yeah, that's your schedule for this week coming up in the world of the National Basketball Association. Why the late start in the Central Time Zone? 9 o'clock start in Milwaukee. That makes no sense, but it's all guided by.
This is a TV thing. A TV thing, I guess. Maybe that's probably the only reason I can think of as to why they would do that. But yeah, because remember the Bulls had that too. They had like 8:30 games and such. So
they did that. They did that last year against the Brooklyn Nets. It was a 9 o'clock start on ESPN. It's like Bulls don't play 9 o'clock games at the United. So that's never happened until last year. But like I said, TV dictates everything. Sometimes it's for the good. Sometimes it's for the not so good. But we'll leave it at that. You're listening to Second City Sports or Sports on Chicago, the Monday edition. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. Lakina, we have a couple of minutes left before we break for the bottom of the hour. I wanted to ask you, I know Bulls basketball has driven Bulls fans crazy so far this year. Whether you're watching if you are watching other basketball players and other teams from around the league, whether you're watching ESPN, TNT, or your computer on the NBA League Pass, who are your favorite teams to watch? Since Bulls basketball is driving most of us crazy, who are some of your other favorite teams that you peep in that you like to watch outside the Chicago market?
Well, yeah, I like watching all of them if I can. I mean, if I try to watch like all the sort of the teams that I like. I mean, I think there's no team that I hate, even the rival team. So for me, I think as long as I get a good game, I think it's fine. Of course, I love watching the Clippers. I got them going to the finals this year. I like watching the Sixers.
I did too.
I like watching the Sixers. I mean, the Sixers. I actually picked the Clippers, Sixers, NBA Finals. I believe this year. If not them, then maybe the Nets. Once KD comes back, I like watching Miami. I mean, look, on the West Side, of course, you got Denver. I like what Jokic is doing. The Grizzlies. I'm watching a lot more Kings games. I never thought I'd be saying that after about 15 years.
Right. So, same here.
The Suns. I mean, I hope Devin Booker can come back soon. I hope so. He should be back after the All-Star break. We'll see because they really need him back. Of course, Luka and the Mavs. So like I said, I like watching everybody. So it's not really like a team that I don't like to watch or a player I don't like to watch. I mean, I just like watching good basketball.
Yeah, our good buddy Lamont Scott checking in from the Facebook. He says, being in Louisiana now, I've been studying the Pelicans. If they ever all get healthy, they'll be dangerous. You're right. We said it at the beginning of the year, and they got up to that nice start. And of course, Zion Williamson's hamstring injuries has derailed their as they're now one game above 500. But before Zion got hurt, I liked watching the Pelicans. Of course, the Denver Nuggets. Shout out to our friend of the show, Katie Winchell. She's doing a great job on the Altitude Sports Network. That's a home of the Denver Nuggets. I like watching Denver. Of course, like you say, Sacramento, Lakina. They're having a nice year. Mike Brown should be head coach of the year. Candidate for head coach of the year, especially being this far into the season. They're in the top 3 seeding in the Western Conference. I like watching them. The Orlando Magic, even though this is not the team that you're going to see in the future, but they got a bunch of young talent. As we talked about earlier, they lost to the Bulls last Saturday, but you see that's a nice young talent in Orlando with Wendell Carter Jr. and, of course, Pablo Banchero, who's probably your Rookie of the Year winner right now. So, and Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs, they have a nice young talent. I like watching Orlando. So we'll see what they can improve. I don't know if they're going to take for Victor Wembanyama, but we'll see what happens with that. But I also like watching the Clippers. And part of their broadcast team, I know he does selective games now for the Clippers, is Mike Fratello, a.k.a. the Czar of the Telestory. It's nice hearing from him once again. He's been doing the Clippers games for the past couple of years.
Yeah, I heard him in that play in a game, and sort of I remember he kind of got a little bit of criticism for criticizing, of course, how the team was celebrated after that win in that play-in tournament. But yeah, I mean, look, it's always great to hear him talk. So it's always great to see him. But look, there's no teams that I hate. So feel free to comment on Facebook and our YouTube page on Sports on Chicago if there are teams that you guys like outside your local team. So we got to take a really quick break. We're up against it. So we're going to talk about more college hoops. Of course, Illinois looks like they're starting to get together, but there's a team ahead of them that's doing a little bit more. So some of us in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, and of course, Aussie Open recap and Old School TV Monday all coming up next. Sydney Brown, Lakina McGee, Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. We're wrapping things up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I needed for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks? They can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Oh, sorry. Welcome back to Second City Sports. We're live and live in color on a Monday edition. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid Deslakina. We have less than a half hour left of this extravaganza for today. If you want to follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG, you can go ahead and do so at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan McGee on the IG.
Last chance to get your comments and questions in on Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions and comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. Lakina, it was a big weekend in college basketball. I got a chance to watch a couple of games from start to finish. We'll start out locally as the Fighting Illini have won 6 out of their last 7 games. They improved their record to 15-6 after last Saturday's 61-51 win at Wisconsin on the road. In Madison. They sweep the season series from the Badgers 2-0. Matthew Meyer was the man of the hour for the Fighting Illini. He had 26 points, including 5-11 shooting from three-point range. And for the Wisconsin Badgers, Mr. Hepburn, Chucky Hepburn had 15 points. Lakina, it was a 20-16 Illinois lead at halftime. Both teams struggled shooting the ball early. Wisconsin was the worst because they had 2 of their starters in foul trouble early. But the Fighting Illini had a chance to get back in the game. Not get back in the game, but had a chance to separate themselves in the second half. They did by scoring 41 points. I know they didn't get much from their bench. They only had 2 points from their bench, but it was Matthew Meyer's day. He took it over for the Illini.
Yeah, that's a career high for Myers, and he also too. Yeah, he did very well from 3. I mean, they actually hit their threes. You know, he was talking about it afterwards that was kind of like been the thing in their loss. I'm talking about the Illini's losses, the fact that they didn't hit their 3-pointers in their losses, but they were able to do just that against Wisconsin, and Meyer led the way there. So yeah, a nice win for Illinois. But like I said, they still got Purdue contend with. You know, and they actually play them. I think sometime. I think within the next week or two. So. It's going to be interesting to see if they can kind of keep it up. I mean, we've seen, the good Illini teams and we've seen the bad Illini teams. So luckily, lately we've been seeing the good Illini teams. So we'll see, if they can kind of, get things going there, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it was an impressive win by the Illini, not only because they only had 2 points coming off the bench, but Jaden Epps was the second leading scorer on the team with 13. But Terrence Shannon, who was their big acquisition in all season, he only had 6 points. And also, too, Coleman Hawkins, he's been struggling shooting the ball the last couple of weeks. Ever since they beat Wisconsin the first time a couple of weeks ago, he had 6 3-pointers. He's been struggling shooting ever since then. He only had 5 points. He missed 3 or 4 free throws toward the end of that game. I know Stephen Barr made a comment about sometimes Coleman Hawkins' problem was getting in his own head. But Coleman Hawkins is still a great talent. He's a big guy that can shoot it from the outside. They're going to need him to start stepping up his shooting if the lineup wants to go far this year in the tournament.
We just see if they can keep it up. Now, probably one of the bigger upsets was in the couple came out in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. Oklahoma beats Alabama by 24 points. I did not see that coming. That's the largest ever deficit by an unranked team against a top 2 team. So Grant Sherfield finished with 30 points. Just 2 points shy of a career high, and Oklahoma really needed this if they want to get a chance, perhaps be on that bubble. So Porter Moser trying to do a good job trying to get his guys going there, and they really need a signature win to kind of get them in the bubble conversation. So this will definitely beating a team by 24 points, by 26 points, I should say. That definitely 24 points, I should say. So that should definitely help them a little bit there. Houston beat Cincinnati on Saturday, 75-69. Continuing with the SEC Big 12 Challenge, Tennessee beats Texas 82-71. And K-State beats Florida. Keontae Johnson, of course, we all remember what happened with him in Florida. Collapse a couple of years ago, and now transferred to K-State, becoming a big one of the reasons why K-State's where they are right now. They're the top 10. I know they have dropped a couple of spots for the new rankings coming out, but he had 13 points. A nice widespread scoring effort by the Wildcats there, beating beating Florida by 14. Virginia beat BC. KU finally broke their losing streak. They beat Kentucky 76-68. Jalen Wilson had 22 points, and they actually tend to do better when he's the leading scorer. One of the reasons why he's been kind of struggling lately is because they haven't been playing well. So, the Jayhawks got a nice win, a much needed win because they had to break that streak because they really needed it.
Yeah, I watched most of this game too. One, it was nice to see Calipari losing to a big team on his home court. With that being said, KJ Adams was also the man for Kansas as well. He was the second leading scorer for Kansas. He had 17 points and 2 rebounds. And looking at Kentucky, if it wasn't for their big guy, I forgot his name.
Oscar Tshiebwe.
Thank you. If it wasn't for him, I don't know about their guards and the other shooting guards. They just don't have a guard that can break down the defense. Like I said, this is the first time I watched them from beginning to end this year, so give me a mulligan for that. But they don't have a guard that can break down the defense. If it wasn't for their big guy, I don't know where they're going to get these their other points from. And they're lucky, which their record is now 14-7, but they're lucky they have 14 wins this year. Now, on the flip side for Kansas, as we mentioned, they've been on their 4-game losing streak. It was a big win for them on Saturday. KJ Adams was the Robin to Jalen Wilson's Batman. I told you I've been raving about Wilson these last couple of games, and he's I think he'll be a future NBA player. That's just me personally.
Yeah, he definitely is getting some looks from the NBA. So definitely something, I really like Adams' game and such. So he now has kind of like leading the charge with Wilson too, because he's kind of like sort of like the sidecar guys from last year and their championship team. So it's nice to see him actually be having more contribution this year. So hopefully he and Jalen Wilson, the Jayhawks, maybe they're starting to kind of get things going too. So we'll see if they can keep it up. Now Mississippi State got a nice resume building win. They upset TCU 81-74 in overtime, because like I said, they're 8-3 in conference play. I'm talking about Mississippi State, but they were lacking a signature win, and beating TCU will do just that. So hopefully this is going to be something there for Kermit Davis and his guys they'll to look forward to, and hopefully they can kind of have this win in their back pocket as they get ready to kind of get into tournament time. Tulu Smith, who's their senior forward, had 27 points, which was a season high for him. So definitely, the Bulldogs definitely could be a team to be reckoned with, for one of the play-in spots. I'm talking about like one of the last spots in. So we'll see what happens with that.
Going back to Big Ten basketball locally, can we finally start to take Northwestern seriously? I know in some bracketology predictions, some people have Northwestern as the number 10 seed in their region. They beat the Minnesota Golden Gophers 81-61 in Evanston. Chase Aldridge had 24 points, but the Northwestern shot 45% from three-point range. I did get a chance to watch some of this game. I know one of the commentators on the Big Ten Network, I forgot his name, he pointed out that the difference between the Northwestern teams of the last couple of years and this year is that this team is playing with a chip on their shoulder. You could definitely see that. We talked about it before a few weeks ago when they upset Illinois in Evanston. They're a very good defensive team. Give head coach Chris Collins credit, but it looks like they're starting to play balanced basketball. They really get after you at both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I mean, me and Minnesota by 20 isn't going to get it done for them. If they beat like a Purdue or something like that,
but they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I hear what, because I hear this all the time from Northwestern folks, and I get it. I know, they beat Michigan State, but that's where Michigan State wasn't at full strength when they beat them earlier in Big Ten play. I know they beat Illinois, they beat Indiana. That win against Indiana actually looks good right now. So again, they need more of that. Now they did beat Wisconsin, so that definitely should help them out a little bit. But they play Iowa tomorrow. Now they really need to kind of just keep winning and such. I mean, get those wins and such. I mean, that they get Purdue at home in a couple of weeks. They get Indiana again at home. I would say you'll try to win a couple of those games, and maybe you'll have a shot being on the bubble. I know they're at number 10, but I don't think I think they're more of an 11, one of the last teams in. I think because if you want to play the formula, you want to use these silly little formulas. They've got a little bit of the formula, but they need to do more. So they look, more balanced and such. Yes, they're playing like with a chip on their shoulder and such. But yeah, I need more. I need to see more for this team before I can say that they're definitely in the tournament. So
I think that's fair. That's fair. Like you said, they get those teams again in the next couple of weeks. Like you said, Iowa tomorrow. I believe that's on the road. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have the schedule in front of me yet, but I believe that's on the road.
That's on the road. Iowa.
Well, yeah. So yeah, that's going to be another huge test. We saw what they did at Michigan a couple of weeks ago. They came up short, so they need to start winning some of these games in a row. They are a good team,
which is a bad loss. So
yeah.
You got to have the balance there. You need more of those good losses, good wins instead of the bad losses. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, Mizzou got a nice win against, we call him the Fighting Mike Bermans here on this show. Of course, our buddy from MC Chicago, Mizzou grad. I know he was happy when they upset, not really upset really, but they did pull away from Iowa State 78-61. Crane looks like they're starting to kind of get together. They beat Xavier 84-67. They're actually shooting their threes. Yay. Let's see. West Virginia beat Auburn 80-77. Eric Stevens had 31 points, leading the way for Bob Huggins' Mountaineer squad, and which is interesting because there's only been over the last 25 years, there's only been one player from West Virginia that's ever scored 30 points with 5 plus 3 points against a ranked team, and Eric Stevenson did just that. So Deshaun Butler, of course, did in 09. Stevens had 7 threes in total with their. Was career high for him in that win against and that upset win against Auburn. So not a good loss for Bruce Pearl and his guys. Baylor edged out Arkansas. It was a strange last couple of minutes of that game. You thought that maybe Arkansas was going to win, but then Baylor came back, and then you thought Baylor was going to pull away, but then Arkansas came back. So a couple of old rivals from the Southwest Conference. If you remember that conference from back in the day. That was a nice win for Scott Drew and his guys. So Keontae George had 24 points, of course, including some big shots late to help Baylor hold off Arkansas. Hofstra upset College of Charleston, so they're no longer unbeaten in their respective conference. Pittsburgh got a nice win against Miami, 71-68. Looks like Jeff Capel might be starting to kind of get it going finally in Pittsburgh. So this could be a win that kind of helps them with their attorney resume. So we'll see. Nice win by Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we talked about another couple other local teams that in Illinois that could get into the tournament. I did watch some of these games live via ESPN Plus. Western Illinois defeated South Dakota State. I was thinking about our girl Christine, the Queen Manica. Western Illinois defeated South Dakota State 81-73 in overtime. South Dakota State was up 18 points late, but it was Trent Massiner that had 30 points, including 12 of 22 shooting. He had some big 3-pointers toward the end of regulation and to overtime. Western Illinois outscored South Dakota State 12-4.
Yeah, they're in the Summit League conference. Western Illinois is, and they're kind of like right there in like that top tier. So
they're 14-8 right now.
Yeah, they're 7-4 in conference play. So they're going to have to win their conference to get in the tournament. So could they got a veteran squad over there in Western Illinois. So they haven't been to the tournament. I think about 25 years or something like that. So
yeah,
it would be a nice way for them to kind of get back in the tournament. I mean, I say more Illinois teams the better. So we'll see what happens with that one because I want Western Illinois to get in. I know Southern Illinois. I think they play tomorrow. So
yeah, they had a bad loss yesterday.
I saw. Yeah, I heard
State.
that. Yeah. Well, I mean, Illinois State's not that bad. They're kind of like right there, like in that top tier too. So I wouldn't say that's a bad loss for them. But yeah, I think that's not the kind of losses you want, especially when you're at a log jam. Of course, you now have Murray State and Belmont to contend with too in the Missouri Valley. So you can't really afford to have those kinds of losses to kind of like stay intact with that. So okay, yeah, you had look, the good news is that you still got about a month to figure it out before your conference tournament starts. Oregon got the best of Utah 68-56. Indiana, of course, continuing their role as they beat Ohio State 86-70. Like I said, that win against Northwestern looks better and better for them. San Diego State beats San Jose State in their game as well. So going into this week's games.
One more team to put out, Lakina, one more score before we move on to tonight's schedule. Don't forget about Bradley, and shout out to our guy Jonathan Hood. I know he called this game for the UIC Flames Network. Bradley beat UIC 83-76. Bradley is 15-8 on the year. What do you think about their chances?
I like their chances
in the Missouri Valley.
Yeah, I like their chance. Like I said, it's a log jam in that Missouri Valley Conference now. So I think the way it's set up because it's not going to be like the top. It's kind of like the Big Ten where the top 4 teams, will have buys. I think it's like Southern Illinois. I think Drake. I think no, Belmont actually lost to Drake. So I'm trying to think like how that. I don't have the standings for them in front of me, but I'll look it up real quick. But yeah, I mean that Missouri Valley is going to be like really like congested. So it's going to be interesting to see like which team get that top 4. This is the first time that's ever happened. They have a double bye like the Big Ten. So it's going to be interesting to see like who's going to be. And Southern Illinois and I think Belmont are tied. Belmont, Southern Illinois did beat. I think they play again in a couple of weeks. Then it's Drake and Bradley. That's their top 4 right now. So it's gonna be interesting to see like who will kind of they got about a month left and like about 5 weeks left to talk about the Missouri Valley. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of get together there. But yeah, I mean I'm looking for, like I said, it'll be hard, especially if like Southern and Illinois State play again for the championship, the only spot from the Missouri Valley. So Purdue beat Michigan State 77-61. Zach Edey, I think, is definitely going to be up there with, you could probably say up there with Jalen Wilson, perhaps maybe for player of the year consideration.
He's very good.
Points.
Yes, he makes that Purdue offense go.
Yeah, he had 38 points. He's probably one of the reasons why Purdue is where they are right now. So I think he's definitely going to be. I know some people call him Yao Ming, which I think is a little bit kind of insult to him because he's a little more like buffer than Yao Ming. Like, wait, I know he's like 7'4", but come on now, folks. He's a little bit better than that. But yeah, it is what it is with that. So yeah, I mean, Penn State's looking really good. I think they're ranked back to being ranked. I think for the first time in a few years. Talk about Penn State. So be interested to see what happens with that. Now going to tonight's games, Monday, Baylor and Texas. Texas, hoping to bounce back from that loss over the weekend. That's going to be at 8:00 on ESPN. Iowa State and Texas Tech. That should be a fun one at 8:00 on ESPN2.
In Virginia, number 6 Virginia will travel to Syracuse to take on the Orangemen. That's at 6:00 on ESPN. Now tomorrow, Tuesday, we mentioned the Fighting Illini. They'll host Nebraska. That's at 6:00 on Big Ten Network. Of course, the Illini will try to win 7 out of their last 8 games to improve their record to 15-6. Remember, they beat Nebraska a couple weeks ago on the road. Let's see if they can sweep the season series from the Cornhuskers. I know Fred Hoiberg's crew, they're a couple of games under 500, but that team has had a surprising year. What kind of derailed them is that they had injuries to some of their key stars.
Yeah, that's been kind of like the thing. You thought that maybe they were starting to figure it out, that they might be right there for not necessarily a Big Ten top, but kind of like in the mid or fight for NCAA spot. But they lost a couple of their key guys to injuries. So that's been kind of their thing too. Yeah, that's kind of has not helped them. Kansas State and Kansas State. I know Kansas. What has revenge in their mind? It's weird that they're going to have it streaming on ESPN Plus. You wonder why wasn't this game on ESPN
on TV? Yeah,
which is weird, but I digress. Wake Forest at Duke. Hopefully, Duke trying to avenge that early loss to Wake Forest earlier about a couple of weeks ago. So I'm sure John Shire and his guys will want that revenge at 6:00 tomorrow. UConn and DePaul. Okay. Yeah, DePaul. I know they've had a couple of injuries to their guys too earlier this year, but DePaul is still not. They're not there yet. Especially now that UConn being back. Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one. West Virginia and TCU. That should be a fun one at 8:00 on ESPNU. Indiana and Maryland. Those two had a nice little battle earlier. Conference play. That should be a fun one at 8:00. And Kentucky and Ole Miss at ESPN. And Loyola will try to make things a little bit interesting against Dayton on CBS Sports Network at 8:00. Fresno State and Wyoming at 9 on FS1. And San Diego State, they're back in the top 25. They face Nevada at 10:00.
In the makeup game from January 18th, the Northwestern will travel to Iowa, as we mentioned earlier. That game will take place tomorrow night. I'm trying to find out what network is going to be on real quick as we dig through my information here. They'll be followed by Nebraska, Illinois. So tomorrow night's Northwestern Iowa game will be seen following the Fighting Illini in Nebraska on the Big Ten Network at 8:00.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, maybe that's a nice way to kind of build up their resume for them.
Yes.
Wednesday's games real quick. Providence, Xavier at 5:30 on FS1. Purdue hosts Penn State. Tennessee, number 2 Tennessee at Florida. That's at 6:00 on ESPN2. Georgia at Auburn at 6:00 on the SEC network. Let's see here. Some of the other matchups. Marquette hosts Villanova. Shaka Smarts, as we call them here, 7:30 on FS1, and New Mexico, Utah State. That's at 9:30 on FS1. A little Mountain West action.
Okay, wrapping up the Thursday schedule for college basketball at 8 o'clock on ESPN2. Number 3, Houston Cougars will travel to the state of Kansas to take on the Wichita State. At 8 o'clock on FS1, we have Washington travel to Los Angeles to take on number 9, UCLA. That should be a fun one, especially for you UCLA Bruins fans out there. At 9:30 on ESPN, we'll have Oregon versus number 5, Arizona. That should be a high-scoring game.
Yep.
At 10 o'clock on CBS Sports Network, number 12, Gonzaga will host Santa Clara. Santa Clara is doing well this year. They're at 16-7. And at 10 o'clock on ESPNU, number 18, St. Mary's will host San Francisco.
Yeah, that Santa Clara game. I know they were also very close to beating Gonzaga too earlier this year. So I'm sure they're going to want to get their revenge for that. And Northwestern hosts Michigan at 6 o'clock on ESPN2. That should be a fun one. Of course, Florida Atlantic, they're still undefeated in their conference. In the Conference USA, they face a solid UAB team. That's at 6 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. So that is your schedule. Let me see. Is there anything else? Oh, Stanford and Utah, Oregon State, and Arizona State. Both those games going to be on Pac-12 Network. So, yeah, that is your schedule for, Washington, UCLA. I think you already mentioned this. So that should be a fun one at 8 o'clock on FS1. So, and that is your schedule for this weekend college basketball.
All right, you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in living color from Monday. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. Lakina, before we get to Old School TV Monday, you have a wrap-up on the Australian Open from the world of tennis.
Yes, going to as our buddy Mark Silver would say, we now from a long time ago. Now we go to the courts of tennis. We'll start with the ladies champion, and this is her first title, and it was Ava Sabalenka, who she's been close a couple of times. She's been close a couple of times, but she was able to kind of pull it off. It was actually a chance. I got to replay this match, but yeah, she beats Elena Rybakina in a straight set. Easy for me to say. She lost the first set 6-4, but was able to come back and win the championship 6-3, 6-4. Arina Sabalenka, she's been close a couple of times. She actually had I believe it was like she was at Wimbledon a couple of years back, but she lost that. So, but she's been a fighter. She's been able to come in, and she ends up winning it, her first Grand Slam title. So congrats to her. And also too, Novak Djokovic is back in the winner's circle. He has his 10th Aussie Open, which is the most ever. He also ties with Rafa Nadal for his 22nd Grand Slam title. With everything that happened with not being able to defend his Aussie title nor his U.S. Open title due to COVID, restrictions and such, he's now back in the winner's circle. So I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if I know he's over 30 now. I know he realized that it's probably going to be his last shot to kind of get these Grand Slam titles. So we might be seeing a little bit of a resurgence here with Djokovic. He's a little bit younger than both Rafa and Roger Federer. So, it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of get back to that form.
Yep, as you mentioned, with all the setbacks he's had, he's one of the top male tennis players in the world. He's one of the top tennis players in the world, period, both male and female. So we'll see if the dominance can continue as he's getting back into form.
Absolutely. So we'll see. I mean, like I said, this is going to be interesting if he can kind of get back into it, because I know he's going to be one to get these titles back. So we'll see what happens.
Yes. All right, Lakina, let's wrap up the Monday edition of Second City Sports as we go into our Old School TV Monday salute. This week, we will salute the NBC TV American sitcom Silver Spoons. It was an American television series that aired on NBC from September 25th, 1982 until May 11th, 1986. The series was produced by Embassy Television for the first 4 seasons until Embassy Communications moved its series to syndication after being canceled by NBC. Silver Spoons was created by Martin Cohan, Howard Leeds, and Ben Starr, and it was developed by Michael G. Moyer. Remember that name?
Yep.
He also developed Married with Children, which we saluted a few weeks ago. The show focuses on the wealthy playboy Edward Stratton III and its relationship with his young son Ricky Stratton, played by Ricky Schroeder. Ricky was the product of a brief marriage between Edward and Ricky's mother. Edward was unaware that he had a son until Ricky comes to live with Edward at the outset of the series. The main cast stars Joel Higgins as Edward, Ricky Schroeder, as I mentioned, as Ricky, Leonard Lightfoot as Edward's attorney, Franklin Seals as Edward's business manager, and Aaron Gray as Edward's personal assistant and later love interest. Jason Bateman, who's from Chicago, played Ricky's best friend over the first 2 seasons of the show, replaced by Alfonso Ribeiro over the remaining 3 seasons. John Houseman played Edward's doer and disapproving father.
Yeah, it was a really great show. I think, he was actually, Ricky was actually on the cusp of being sent to, his mom was going to send him to military school when he went to go see Edward. And of course, that they transpired after that and such. And look, I think it was one of those very underrated sitcoms, I feel like, because it was totally different from what what you see like a traditional sitcom was. It was a divorced dad, trying to raise his son. He finds out he has a son. Now he has to figure out how to, he has to be a follower to him and he has to be a son to him. So it was definitely like that relationship kind of like developed as the season went on. Of course, he had Aaron Grave, the secretary. Well, she actually became like better. Actually better. She even joked that she slept her way through the top. So it was she said that. I'm not saying that. She said that a few years back in the reunion. So I didn't say it, but that was a really nice element there. The kind of had that mom kind of element there as well. Christina Belfort played the mom, Evelyn. she had a couple of appearances. So she was terrific. John Houseman, Oscar winner. That was a great get. When I saw that, I was like, oh, that's so cool. They got him playing the dad. And he's definitely like the more like stern, traditional, conservative type. Of course, Edward being like totally not. And, Ricky was kind of like the in-between. So, that was really cool. And of course, Alfonso Ribeiro joined it because that was a big coup because they actually wrote that part for him. I remember Alfonso saying in interviews, they kind of the Bruce kind of made that part for him. Jason Bateman, I think it would have been great if he had stayed, but of course, bigger things were happening for him. He actually left to do another series. Of course, he would eventually do the Hogan family, Valerie's family, Valerie's family, whatever. The 5 different names of that show, which we salute to a couple of months ago. But that was the reason why he left. That would have been cool if he had stayed for the whole show. But bigger things were happening ahead for him. But it was actually a great show. Couple of the top, I guess, memorable guest spots. Menudo, remember that was an episode.
Ricky Martin before he went on his own in the 90s.
Right. Also, Whitney Houston, of course. She was another one famous.
Before she started singing. Yes. Remember, she was also too on "Give Me a Break."
Yes, she was in the last season. Martika for Kids Incorporated. Remember that show? So we'll probably salute that one at some point.
Yeah, we will.
So it was definitely like a cool 80s, typical, they dealt with various issues and whatnot, but a very underrated show, I would say. But it's unfortunate what happened with Franklin Seals, who died. I think Leonard Lightfoot, I think, had AIDS. Oh no, he had I think cancer. I think Franklin Seals, I think, had AIDS. So there were definitely some rumors about that, but unfortunately, they're both no longer with us. But I know they're still the other cast members, Rick Schroeder, Joel Higgins, Aaron Gray, Alfonso Ribeiro. I had to give Rick Schroeder the side eye with some of the stuff he has said over the years. We won't get into that, but had a big crush on him back today. I don't anymore. You guys will know why. Google it, folks. But I remember that show. I love that show. Very underrated show. I think it could have lasted longer had it not, certain parameters had not, kind of dictate that.
I remember watching it on reruns. It was on Channel 50, the power station here in Chicago back in the day, and it was on various cable stations throughout the 90s. And great comment with our guy Lamont Scott. He says that show showed me that I could have white friends. That's true because Alfonso Ribeiro was one of the 2 black characters on this show. Remember, Alfonso, obviously this is before Fresh Prince in the 90s, but remember, Alfonso Ribeiro's profile was rising because remember he did that
Michael Jackson,
the Michael Jackson commercial for Pepsi back when back in the day when Billie Jean was out. So he actually did a heck of a job. He was a little version of Michael Jackson. So his star was rising back then. And we watched Ricky Schroeder grow up too, from a young man, from a little boy to a young man. Of course, he went on to do all his other various projects, TV movies, and of course NYPD Blue in the 90s. So he had staying power in Hollywood as well. So it was an overall great show. Those typical 80s family sitcom shows. Had a little crush on the mother too during the later years, but we'll leave that alone. But overall, it was a great show. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube and other streaming services somewhere. So, like I said, it was very underrated, good, but a very underrated show. It ran for a total of 5 seasons with a total of 116 episodes.
Yeah, you probably say it probably could have lasted a little bit longer, maybe. I mean,
yeah,
like I said, the rating was still pretty high, so I don't know, maybe with certain parameters, like I said, with certain parameters would have been a little bit different back in the day. But yeah, I think, look, it was a solid show. It dealt with some great life lessons. It dealt with various issues like your typical 80s sitcom shows would do. But yeah, I think it was a great show for the time, and yeah, I mean, it was a great early to mid 80s sitcom. I think it was terrific.
Yeah, and one more comment from Lamont. He posted it up early. He said it was a great show. I always wanted a train in my house because of that show. So yeah, that train running around the house. Yeah,
the remote control. You didn't have to go, you could just do the remote control. You just
who didn't want that if you grew up in the 80s back then?
Yeah, I mean, look, it beats having the intercom, I guess. So you could probably say that was kind of like early, so before the Ring doorbell, you had the remote control doorbell. So there you go with that.
And look what we have now with all these securities devices and cameras and stuff like that.
Yeah, you had the arcade. Yeah, who didn't want to have an arcade game in their
exactly
in their house? I mean, who didn't playing Pac-Man? I think I was totally jealous, but fortunately, living in an apartment building, we couldn't have trains, of course, in our front room. So
same here, yeah, same here.
So yeah, so I did. It was just but it definitely kind of it definitely great life lessons and stuff. So it had a nice little mixture of it, kind of towed the line between the goofball family sitcom, but also some serious stuff as well. So.
Yeah. So we salute this week the NBC TV sitcom Silver Spoons. Just a programming reminder: starting next Monday and throughout the month of February, we'll have some special editions of Old School TV Monday. We're playing some great things for you guys. So during Black History Month, we'll be back on Friday because it'll be our first show for the month of February. But starting next Monday, throughout the whole month of February, we'll have some special programming that will salute some special programs during Black History Month for Old School TV Monday. You guys, we are really going to love these. We promise you.
Oh yes, absolutely, and yeah, we got some great shows, and probably some shows you guys probably haven't heard about in years. So we'll definitely maybe bring out some memories there too. So yeah, going to be very interesting, these next few weeks. So I can't wait. Now, of course, we were remiss if we didn't say anything about Bobby Hall. Of course, he passed away earlier this morning, and he's still a franchise leader in goals, 604 goals in a season, 58. The season 58, that was the 68-69. Also, game-winning goals, hat tricks with 28. Goals per game, almost one. So, I know over the years he's made some comments that I know some folks are too, keen on and such. But I can separate the game from the person. So, yeah, he might not have been, the best guy, especially later on. But I'm gonna remember him for the player that he was. So.
Yeah, go check out this ESPN Sports Century episode of Bobby Hole. You'll get your information there on YouTube. But as a player, him and Stan Mikita and Tony Esposito were the Black Hawks from the 60s and the early 70s. Remember, talking about Bobby Hall, he left the Black Hawks, I believe, in 1972 to join this lower league called the WHL because he wanted to get paid. Hockey players in particular were not getting paid at what they are now.
Nope.
So he was kind of revolutionary from that standpoint. But he was Mr. Black Hawk back then. Of course, he was part of that 1961 Stanley Cup championship team, along with Stan Mikita, who's no longer with us as well. So, and of course, when the Black Hawks started winning Stanley Cups many years ago, of course, John McDonough, who's no longer there, and of course, Rocky Wirtz, who was spearheaded that. They brought some of the legends back to help advertise the Blackhawks, bring the branding back to Chicago as they were winning, of course. And not only Bobby Holyo's, of course, the late Stan Mikita and Dennis Savard as well. They were the ambassadors for the Blackhawks alumni. So as far as his talent, it'll never be forgotten. He's definitely an all-time Chicago Blackhawk. He's up there on Mount Rushmore, and his legacy will never be forgotten.
Absolutely. So we used to our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Bobby Hall. So
Of course, his son Brett had a great career.
Yep, had a great career with the Blues and the Stars, among others. So
yeah, won the Stanley Cup with the Stars in '99. Yes.
Yep. So so we salute him, and our thoughts and prayers go out to Brett and the rest of the family as they're going through this tragic loss. But even on a happy note, though, Chip Carey, speaking of a guy who is from a legacy family, he has officially been announced as a new play-by-play guy for the St. Louis Cardinals. So. Of course, they're making that official announcement just now. So, of course, for Bally Sports Midwest. So, so welcoming, back to the fold, to the Midwest and the NL Central to Mr. Chip Carey.
And I'm sure he's going to have a few beers once they come to Chicago a couple of times this year. Of course, they'll come. I'm talking about St. Louis. They'll come here twice for the Cubs when they play the Cubs in Wrigley. I believe it's twice or three times. And then they'll be here again in early July after the 4th of July, and they'll have an interleague weekend series against the White Sox. So we'll be seeing Mr. Carey around these parts at least a few times this year.
Right, a lot. So I'm sure they'll have some nice things to say about him. Now, with that said, you can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, SIDKID80, SIDKID80. And make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast at War on Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And make sure you give War Media a follow at WAR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
For those of you that are interested, the individual tickets for Chicago White Sox home games for the upcoming 2023 season will go on sale on Thursday at 2 o'clock. For you Cubs fans, they'll go on sale on Friday, February 24th. For those that are interested, just saying.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the Cubs will have their similar tickets as well. I think they're going to be on sale too this week. So, with the next couple of weeks, pitchers to catchers, I guess they come up with about 7 weeks. So about 6 weeks, I would say, about 6 or 7 weeks, depending, around that range. So, so get your baseball, looks like we may have some promise here in Chicago. We don't really know, but we'll see what happens there. You can go ahead and you can do your research too. We'll get the suggestions out there for you, Lamont. So we'll have that coming up for you all month long in February. And don't forget, Sports Zone Chicago is on Roku TV.
Roku!
Excuse me, Sports Zone Chicago on your Roku TV app, on the Roku stick, on the Roku remote, as we have right here. So you look up our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellas, What's Up Cubs. Remember, tonight, Sid, once again, they'll have Chris Zorge, former Bear Chris Zorge, tonight. Jason and the coach, as I call him, they'll have on tonight at 6 o'clock. So make sure you guys check that out for that one. Of course, you can catch the replay too, but be nice. They're our friends, so check them out if you can.
Yes.
But you can check them out on Roku TV.
Yes. And make sure you catch Second City Sports live in the 11 color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as you young folks would say. Check out Second City Sports. We're live in the 11 color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
All right, folks. I know it's a little bit colder in some spots around the country, but check out all the sports you got. College basketball, I should say. You got NBA and such. So, of course, you're geared up for the Super Bowl. Hopefully, we'll have some great guests on to talk about that within the next week or two. So, I think I saw the Eagles on an early favorite at 1.5. It was 2.5, and now it's down to 1.5. So. I'm sure it'll probably the media will probably change over the course of the next couple of weeks. So we'll keep you guys updated on that. So for Sid, I'm Lakina. You're not gonna wash your hands, wear your mask, and be good to each other. This has been Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you Friday.
Love, peace, and hair grease. Holla!